Okay, so to make it easy, we'll just go straight down here. Now, I'm going to literally pull out the micro tubing. She said optimistically. This can actually get in here pretty hard. And I am supporting the plumbing with one hand because I don't want to torque the plumbing and break it. That would be not good, because that would be yet another project that needs to be done today when we're on a short string, so to speak. Okay, now I've got all these loose pieces of micro tubing, and this is what the micro tubing looks like. It is literally just a piece of micro tubing, which is this stuff here. It is smaller than 1/4 of an inch. It says on here, Dig Corporation 0.118 by 0.187. And that is the actual size, in probably inside and outside diameter or something like that. And it has a cute little stake that goes on it. I am going to be using a different kind of stake for this. This requires a larger top stake like this. This is like the same sort of thing I would use in the garden. And I'm just going to get these guys out of here as I start going through. And all I'm going to do is make sure that I put 12 of these guys out here. So I'm going to just dump them over to the side for now and make sure that everything I do winds up with a connection to the water source. So some of these are easy to get to, and I'll just remove them now. Others are winding through other bins and little crannies and nookies and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, the ones that I can easily yank out, I'm going to. The ones that take some more hassle factoring, I'll deal with later. Okay, so I've got a bunch of them out. So as my first start, I'm going to just run one straight down here. Now, actually what I might do is just run one straight over to the cucumber, because that way it'll kind of be a little bit more visible. So all I have to do is take one of these connectors that's going to go into the distribution hub and push it in here. Now, you'll see me spit on these things a lot of times, and that's because it's hard to get them in sometimes. Takes a little hand strength. Part of it depends on how warm this stuff is. Like, if this had been sitting out here for a couple of hours, this plastic would get really warm, and therefore it would be softer. It's been sitting in the house, which is not air conditioned, but it was in the shade. I'm going to move some of these plants out of the way temporarily just because I don't want to step on them. All I have to do is, there's holes in the bottom of this distribution hub. I'm going to stick this connector up into that hole. I'm going to control the spring. That's a technical term. And I'm going to literally unroll this as if it were an obnoxious garden hose that wants to spring all over the place. As it gets warm in here, it will soften and it will lay down beautifully. I may initially decide to actually sort of pin it in place just to control what I'm calling the spraying factor. And here I have one of these micro tubings, so let's get him out of the way. I'm going to run this down here, and I am not going to make it super tight. Now, the reason I'm not going to make it super tight, and I mean, by tight I mean the distance between that emitter head and here, is I don't want to put any pressure on that emitter head. And I also want to be able to scooch these buckets around 3 or 4 inches without having to worry about changing everything up. Changing everything up is just another job, and you have to ask yourself, how many times do you want to change things up? So I have a stake, I have a scissor, and I have an emitter head. I'm going to decide on the length of my cord that goes here. My cord, it's actually a tube, it's a pipe if you want to think about it. It's 1/4 inch in diameter. I'm going to do the same thing I did with the thing at the other end and just cram it on there all the way. What you want is there's a lump on each one of these connectors, and you want that to be solidly inside and away from the edge of the tubing so that it does not have a tendency to slide out. I'm going to put this down in the pot put the stake in place, and now it's going to direct that water so that it lands approximately in between the 2 cucumber plants, actually 3 cucumber plants. I'm not sure if that's actually 2 cucumber plants over there or one that's kind of split into 2 or whatever. But we have sort of 2 areas I want to cover. And that's all there is to it. Now I'm just going to repeat that process until I have 12 emitters connected to the hub. I'll probably do this guy next. And you can go in either direction. So I showed you from the hub out to the plant last time. This time I'm probably going to do it in the other direction because it might be a little easier here because of the fact that I'm dealing with plants in the way. So this time I'm going to, and let me show you up close. If you look at these emitters, they have a lump on them. They always do. All of the connectors have something like that on it. And when you push it in, when you get it all the way seated in there, you'll wind up with a bump in there. It looks like a snake that ate a mouse, you know? See that bump right there? And the bump should not be real close to the edge. It should be far away from the edge as you can get it. That locks it into place. Then I'm going to take a stake. I'm going to put it in my bucket. In this case, this bucket. And again, sort of in between the 2 plants that are in this bucket. I'm keeping this rolled up because I don't want it to go spraying all over the building, so to speak. I want it to have some sort of control, and I'm also trying not to step on anything down here because I'm working around other pots. And I'm going to decide on a distance. I'm going to cut this off. I'm going to add a connector, which remember has the same kind of a ridge on it that the other guy does. These are harder to get in because they have a more definitive ridge, but they want to make sure that the pipe is not ever going to come off. Has it ever come off on me? I think it has. Only when I was working outside when it was cold and my supplies were cold. Now that one's done. Now this one over here still has a piece of micro tubing in it. So let's see if we can get that guy out. That's why I disconnected them at the hub first, because I wanted to be able to just move things this way and not worry about it. Now, that's 2 out of 12. Now do try and make the ends of your cuts on your tubing as straight as possible. If you make it on a really serious diagonal, it may not work correctly. It requires something solid to be able to anchor into in order to work. This tubing does tend to sort of kink up a little bit. A bit annoying, but totally navigable. You just need to be patient with it. Don't rush. You know, all things in good time sort of a thing. And it'll be fine. And don't cut it too short. Now, if I were to cut it too short, I can probably use it somewhere else because I'm early in the process here. Just let that go because I couldn't hang on to it. There it is. And it springs up like one of those silly retractable hoses, spiral hoses or whatever they call them, which I understand are awesome for like small patio areas. I've never owned one because I have had a small patio area, but not in like a gazillion years. And they didn't have them back then, so I never tried them. because when they don't exist, you don't try them. So I am simply working my way around this distribution center, and I'm putting some into the back now because I want to have it going all the way around here, kind of. Okay, so now I have that one, this one, and that one done. I still need to do this one and this one here. So let's get this guy set to go. Now, if you were watching really closely, you may have noticed that I actually skipped one, which is this one right there. There's a space here, and I'm like, because I want that to go as short a distance as possible. Why not? And what I'm dealing with today is a shortage of supplies. So I'm trying to make what I have do all the things I need to have happen. So I'm trying to decide whether I do 2 that are that long, which would get me to that, and it'd be kind of cutting it close. Okay, I'm going to leave this one a bit longer, and I'm simply going to go to this one down here, which has got sweet potatoes in it. It'll have a slightly longer tube on it, but that's okay. Just means I'll have a little flexibility, a little more flexibility later on. I don't always use this kind of emitter in the garden because usually I'm working in rows there, and for rows I'm using tubing that looks sort of like this, except it will have either what they call emitters or slices in them, or, you know, there's a bunch of different names depending on the company and the exact product and all that other sort of thing. I'm going to stick this right kind of in the middle. Now, what I may choose to do later is I may choose to anchor some of these with additional stakes to control the factor of craziness in here. But now both that one, this one, that one, that one, and that one, and that one all have emitters. Now I'm going to move the sweet potato vines over. Again, I'm trying hard not to step on these guys because I'm just letting them run on the floor. And I'm going to still have a couple of pieces of micro tubing in here. I don't want to just yank them because they're anchored with stakes in the individual pots. I don't want them to damage the plants. There we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yes, I am halfway done with this section here. So be moving down this way a little bit farther. And I will use this, which is the lid from a coupling container. What I'm trying to do is keep this stuff so I don't have to walk too far every time. Easy access. I'm not trying to choose immaculate brand new stakes, but I'm also trying to ignore the ones that are the dirtiest. Now I have another roll. I don't know whether this roll has been previously used or not. I suspect it has been, so it's probably nowhere near 100 feet. But I'm pretty confident that will at least be enough to finish this process. And the next time I can get by Home Depot, I will pick up the remaining supplies I need to finish the other distribution center. There's nothing I can do about it right now. I am not going out today simply to get something from Home Depot, which is, you know, like 60 miles from here. Tomorrow, we have to go for eye doctor appointments to Flagstaff. However, that's a whole nother story with a whole different process involved. So I won't be picking them up then, probably, because I don't want to drive them all over the state. That doesn't make a lot of sense. So now I am going to be putting a connector right here on the backside. It will simply go right there. Okay. All right. Now I have one short spot that needs to go in over here. It will go from there to here. Rough on the fingers. If you can't do this because you don't have the hand strength, you can dip the end of the tubing in a mug of hot coffee or, well, hot water. Don't bother wasting your coffee or tea. That will make it more pliable. Here we go. Almost screwed that up. I had to put a emitter on it, not another connector. It's what happens when your brain is busy thinking too far ahead. Emitter on one end, connector on the other. And a stake. And that allows me to just sort of slide in here and stake it right where I want it. There we go. Okay. I'm getting perilously close to being done. Those four right there should be the only ones that are open. There's no debris in here. I'm going to put that back on. Okay, so I need one that goes to this one that goes to that one to that one, and one to that one, and then this whole section is done. Yep, that's it. This finally died. Okay. I normally leave these things on as long as I can, because when they just plain spring off, there's something of an annoyance. So I'm actually going to go ahead and put a zip tie on here loosely, because if I just let this go, it's going to go spring all over the place. It's going to be very annoying. So in this case, I'm also going to work from the end to end, but I'm going to sort of feed it through, because I've got a little bit of a jungle here. I'm going to hook it over there. And there's a fly that's just driving me bonkers here. Okay, so we need a stake. We need a emitter end. I'm going to slide I want to make sure that whatever I do with my end that the emitter is going to go on, I do not get dirt into it. So when you're hooking things around and stuff like that, make sure that you keep it out of the dirt. You do not want dirt in your irrigation lines. If by some chance you get dirt in your irrigation line, the best solution is actually to not put the emitter on it, but to run it briefly with the emitter off, just let it squirt out like a fire hose, and that will usually blast any dirt out that has gotten in there, because you do not want it getting clogged up. That is extremely annoying. Nope. I've tried to kill that guy a dozen times already. He's fast. Okay. So that end is done now. He's got his emitter, he's got his stake, and now the tube, which is a little spiraled. That's okay. And we have a tangled up piece of plant. And we're going to bring him right up here. And we're going to lop him off. And I have some spare connectors down here. Okay, there's another one done. Which one am I going to do next? I am going to do this one. Now, the reason I'm doing them from the farthest out in this case is because of the way it's all like a little jungle in there. It'll be easier to run the short ones than it is to run the long runs. So I'll just run the long runs first, get them done. If I was super concerned about getting dirt into this, I could actually put the emitter on before I even thread it through, because you can see the emitter is not huge. It's not going to impair your ability to slide stuff through. Now, I could still get dirt in the end of the emitter, but it's less likely to clog up the plumbing than if I get it into the actual plumbing part of the tube. Now, there we go. I want to get this under the nasturtium so that it's just squirting merrily into this bucket. It's an alert from Mojave County probably telling me that the power is still out there. We had a big windstorm last night that this completely sprung out of the ground. Bong! That happens once in a while. Come here. Where are you? There he is. Yeah, in Mojave County last night, they had a big windstorm that took down a whole stack of electric poles. And they have no idea when they're going to be able to fix all that, because we're not talking like 10, we're talking like dozens of power poles, so not cool. Is it bringing it up now? No, it's not. It yelled at me earlier to tell me that. And while that's interesting, it's not quite as relevant to me as getting my irrigation finished right now. And to all my friends who live in Mojave County and have no power, I'm sorry. Sorry, I just whacked your microphone. Damn, that fly has got to die. This one is just particularly persistent. If I decided, for instance, that tomato over there is now done and I need to no longer water it, I can simply put a cap inside here that will shut off that individual water distribution location. And that's one of the reasons I love this system so much, is because I don't have to use valves, I don't have to use anything fancy, difficult to install or anything else like that. Does it ever leak? Yeah, it does. It's not really intended for a totally dry environment, so I would never use this, say, in my dining room. Sometimes the distribution heads can leak a little. The big leak source is usually the valves, because they will drain back out and they do put some water out on the table. Now, the table here is covered with plastic. I'm not concerned about it doing any damage in here. This is a greenhouse. But I would not use that in my dining room because it would get the place wet. And that's a no-no. One of the problems with trying to run irrigation systems inside your house, even if they're just temporary, is the fact that most irrigation systems do have drips and drabs and drops. And, you know, that's fine in a greenhouse environment. Your super high-tech greenhouse environments may use higher quality stuff than I can get. But I suspect they still drip sometimes. And it's not a big deal there because they're set up to handle moisture and water and overflows and all kinds of other issues. Whereas your dining room may not be. So I have been frustrated by the fact that I cannot easily set up systems in the house. But it just is the way it is. You have to be in a situation where you can know that if there's a drip, it's not going to mess up something. We don't have hardwood floors, we have stone floors. So it's not the problem it would be, say, if we had hardwood floors. But I still don't want stains, I still don't want hassles, I still don't want, you know, an area rug getting wet, that sort of thing. So, yeah, it does add to the challenge. And this is the last connector. All right. I'm going to go around and I'm going to squish everyone in again to make sure that they're seated correctly. Because just sometimes the process of banging other things around can loosen something. Everything is seated correctly. I'm going to take out this. It's a piece of insulation from a wire left over from the install. Get that out of here. Throw that down there. Okay. Now comes the scary part.